Hi, this is Dave Hoskins, and here to talk about bankruptcy again. And today we're going to be talking about when to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Okay, but first we need to do a little bit of review. Okay, and so the first thing we review is, well, what's Chapter 7? Chapter 7 is a liquidation bankruptcy, and what happens there is that you give up non-exempt property, then you get a discharge of your debts. Okay, and then in Chapter 13 bankruptcy, Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a payment plan. And so when do you do a payment plan? All right. Well, first thing is if you have too much income for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So if you have disposable income, that's income, more income than you need for your reasonable living expenses, then the law forces you into a Chapter 13 for 5 years. So that's the first instance where you end up in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Okay, the second instance when you may end up in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is if you have filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy within the previous 8 years. Okay, from the time you filed your previous bankruptcy until now, has it been less than 8 years? Because if it has been, then the only bankruptcy that's available to you, the only way that you can get the protection of the bankruptcy court is to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, okay, and get a discharge of your debt. But you'll be in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy for a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 5 years. Okay. Now, another time that you may file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, a very common thing, is if you've fallen behind in the payments for your home, or if you've fallen behind in payments for your car. I don't recommend it for just a car because it's such an expensive process, but certainly for a home, to save your home, it's worth the headache, and it's a long headache because it's a 3 to 5 year headache of the bankruptcy court and the bankruptcy trustee looking over your shoulder. So, so the first three things we have is, one, if you have disposable income, Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The second thing is if you filed a bankruptcy, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy within the previous 8 years, then you're forced, then the only way you can get bankruptcy, protection of the bankruptcy court, is to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And then third is if you are behind in your mortgage payments or behind on car payments, then you file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in order to save your house and save your car. Okay. And then the final circumstance, and I'm not saying it's the only circumstance, but certainly another one that's somewhat common, is if you have an unprotected asset that you wish to keep, then a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is the way to go. So if let's just say you have too much equity in your home. Okay, in Colorado, the homestead exemption is $75,000 for people who are under the age of 60. So if you have more than that in equity in your home, if you filed a Chapter 7, the trustee would take your home and sell it, give you the first $75,000, but your home would get sold. Okay, so and if you have more equity than $75,000, then you may file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. In Chapter 13, the trustee does not take your home, but the amount that you would have lost in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy will be paid to your creditors in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Okay, so let's review again. When do we file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a payment plan. So we file Chapter 13 bankruptcy if you have disposable income. In that case, you're forced into Chapter 13 for 5 years. If you have filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy within the previous 8 years, then the only way you can get protection of the bankruptcy court is to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy for 3 to 5 years, payment plan, 3 to 5 years. Or if you are behind in your mortgage, you want to save your home, we take the amount that you're behind in your mortgage, you put it into a plan that gets paid off over a period of 3 to 5 years in Chapter 13. And then finally, if you have too much equity, unprotected equity in something, and the example I gave was in a home, so even if you have a classic car that's just worth more than the exemption, you have a $7,500 exemption for up to 2 automobiles, but you have a classic car and it's worth $20,000, you want to keep that car, then Chapter 13 bankruptcy is the way to do that, because in Chapter 13 bankruptcy, the trustee does not take your property, but you pay the unprotected value to your creditors in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.